Happy Star Wars Day. May the Force be with you, with all of you. So, it's Thursday afternoon, it's 4 p.m. in Central Europe, and it's 5 p.m. in Israel, and it's Space Café Israel time. Our Space Café Israel by Meidad Pariente will begin very soon. As always, we really appreciate your participation and your ongoing feedback, and we will learn and improve based on that. I'm Thorsten, publisher of SpaceWatch.Global, and SpaceWatch.Global is a Europe-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. And first of all, I would like to thank all our private and corporate supporters who are committed to keeping our independent journalism alive, and we really appreciate that. In case you want to join us as a supporter, it's just a click away on our website, and you can help us. I know many of you are familiar with our website, our bi-weekly and daily newsletters, and the Space Café podcast. So don't miss the latest one on the podcast side. It's with Michael Lenz and Mark Subaru, NASA's creative visitors, about storytelling and the art of communicating science. And on the radio side, I just released this morning an interview we conducted with Dr. Walter Pelzer, the Director General of the German Space Agency, during the Space Symposium 2 weeks ago, actually. And a few more are in production for you. And you will find them, like all our audio services, wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you want to become a space watcher, like you can see with Meidad or with me here as space watchers, and let the world know about it, visit our fan shop also on our website. And if you've missed any of our previous web talks, we have an archive on our webpage in the event section. And of course, we are also on YouTube. Please note that we will host Space Café Israel live regularly. And with that, my job is done for the moment. And Meidad, over to you.
Thank you, Thorsten. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Space Café episode 10 on this glorious summer day here in Israel for Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you all. Yeah, it's a geeky kind of start, but if you are a geek, own it. So my guest today is Dr. Shimrit Maman, Senior Scientist and Director for the Earth and Planetary Image Facility and Head of Israel's UN Spider RSO. And she has a lot of other titles also that we'll talk about. Shimrit, welcome.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Today, we're going to discuss space for good, from science to policy. And that's a very interesting subject that I know very little about, so I'm eager to hear from you, Shimrit. But let's start with the question I always ask my guests. Can you share something personal that people don't know about you and isn't written on your LinkedIn page?
Well, actually, there's a lot of things that people don't know about me. I don't know how many people do know about me. But I have to be completely honest, and this is very personal. I rarely update my LinkedIn page. And, recently we had this great conference in Beersheba and Ben Gurion University of the Negev. We have a new student community that is called Space Gurion. And we had astronaut Eitan Stiva over to speak. And my students were telling him, she did not update her CV since 2016. So Eitan answered, well, you still got to her, right? So she probably has other ways to communicate. So that I don't do that very often. I'm not a big social media activist, but I do appreciate the people who have the patience for that.
Okay. So still, that was a very elaborated answer, but not to my question. Can you share something personal about yourself?
Well, that was personal.
Really? The fact that you don't update your CV?
Well, I have two kids, which are great. I have a 15-and-a-half-year-old and a 12-and-a-half-year-old. And my little girl is part of the reason I started with the She Space project. And we're going to get to that at the end.
Yes.
So I'm going to connect that story to later on.
Great. So, Shimrit, when was the first time you decided you wanted a career in remote sensing field? Why specifically remote sensing?
Well, actually, and this is another personal story for you. I had a really good friend that was a tour guide. And I don't know how it is in other countries, but in Israel, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, each tour guide had this map of Israel that they would take out and highlight the area. And this friend, his name, by the way, is Ofir Matzrafi. He has his own GIS company here in Israel. He did not use a map. He used the satellite image. And I was so fascinated by that. I'm like, he took out a satellite image and pulled it out, and we were in the field. And that was, I think, one of the first times I was exposed, not on the news, but to somebody that actually deals with satellite imagery. And we were discussing where he got that from. And he said, I'm doing my bachelor's in Ben-Gurion University. I'm studying geography. And there's this great professor by the name of Professor Dan Bloomberg. And he's teaching us how to use satellite technology for Earth observation. So I just joined along, was fascinated by that. And this is something that was a game changer for my life, because that was one of the first times I realized that you could use satellite technology for so many different aspects, and you don't have to be only a rocket scientist.
Okay, great. Your entire career, you mentioned Ben-Gurion University in the Negev, is focused around the desert, whether the institute itself or where you chose to build your home. Do you think that it has an impact on your interests and passion?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Living in Israel is really unique, because if you go from north to south, we basically have like all climatic zones. We go from hyper arid in the Arava region and Elad down south to snow cover up in the Hermon. So we basically have everything climate-wise. But 60% of Israel is a desert. It's the Negev desert. And for me, it was quite clear from the beginning that I'm going to live in the desert when I grow up, and the desert environment, and that this is where we're going to set our home. And that's another personal thing for you, because I know my husband since I'm 14. When I was 14 and a half, that's when I met my husband. Okay. We're together. I'm married for 20 years now. And both Nitzan and I came to study in Ben-Gurion. He has his PhD in physics, and we were doing like the whole path and the academic career together. And the desert environment has something very challenging in it. Just like Mars, you have to live up with an additional challenge. And this is something that we were just both fascinated by and intrigued by. And it was just really clear for us from the beginning that this is where we're going to set our home and research and base everything. When you have no water, you have to be more creative, and you have to be more innovative. And you could see that also in how Israel is applied with those challenges, because being such a dry, arid country and being so successful in agriculture, and you could basically grow most of the things in Israel in such great conditions and very high tech. So that's a challenge that is easily overcome by technology. And add that to space, and you get like this great combination. So for me, it's a challenge that I took on really well.
Yeah, I can totally relate, being born and raised in the desert myself. I can share with you and the audience that, and I will refer it to today, when I first saw the images from Tatooine, I said, oh, that's my hometown.
Yeah.
Looks exactly the same. So,
yeah.
You were involved in the first Israeli academic nanosatellite, BGU-SAT. What did you learn while working on the actual satellite that took you by surprise, because it was an actual hardware, actual spacecraft, and not only the outcomes and payloads?
Well, first of all, for me, it was just about the learning process, first of all, because I come from a different background. I'm not an engineer, and I had to fill that gap. Okay. Yeah,
I'm a physicist.
Okay, so I wasn't an engineer. I started off as environmental sciences, earth sciences. I moved on to physics, environmental physics, came back to climate change using remote sensing. And when I was offered to manage this whole project from Ben Gurion University and be one of the scientists on the project, I was really excited. First of all, it's such a great honor to lead such a project. BGU-SAT is, even though it was really small, it's a 3U CubeSat, so it's a 10 by 10 by 30 centimeters, had over 30 research groups on it. And one of the most interesting groups we had is actually from the management and business school here in Ben Gurion, because one of the students came up and said, do you guys know how to manage a satellite project? And I said, oh, this is my first time. Let's do a project about that. Okay, so that even those are the things that I didn't even think about it. It's just like things you learn on the way. I was very surprised at the time that was the only nanosatellite, a 3U nanosatellite that has a shortwave infrared camera on it. So that was a great achievement. It was quite surprising because it's not just learning about how few nanosatellites are there with that kind of technology. There aren't that many, but then comparing it to the rest of the available larger satellites and learning how few satellites are there that have a shortwave infrared imager on them. So that was a bit of a shocker. And we realized how much that is needed in order to better map things like flash floods. Okay, this is like a need that came from the ground. But then when you're looking up and looking for available satellite that have a SWIR band on them, you realize that there aren't that many. So that was a bit shocking for me. And there were a lot of lessons learned. One of the things we like to laugh most about is the different needs of engineers and environmental scientists. Okay, and this is something that I gave in one of my talks back while when we were hosting COSPAR in Israel. Communication is something that is really important, not just in satellites, but also between the staff. And we had a really great achievement also from the technology point of view that BGU-SAT had attitude control on it. So you could move the satellite and you could control the degree of the shooting. And in one of the missions, we were waiting for a flash flood to occur, which is something very rare in Israel. It doesn't happen every year, it doesn't happen, and then you have to time when the satellite and the chances. And we knew there was a storm coming. We knew that we want to take that image and we want to study it really well. We were waiting for that. And then our colleague said, okay, we got the image for you, and I'm waiting for the image. We get the image and something's wrong with the image. We see everything like just smeared. And I said, okay, this is really weird. We have to think what happened here. And I said, wait, could it be that one of the engineers moved the satellite as it was shooting. Okay. And I was like, okay. So we called them up and we say, okay, could that be? And my colleague goes, did you see how cool that was? I was just like, for us, it's just like we could throw that image to the garbage. We have nothing to do with it because it was really cool. It's a great ability, but not while you're waiting for that image. And that to start co-registering the image, it was just like a nightmare. And we ended up not able to use that. So, so even things like that were learned.
So your bottom line is it's all about communication between. Well, I can share with you, being a system engineer in space projects, that I always tell all the engineers I work with that my role is to make sure that everybody will be disappointed evenly.
We weren't disappointed. We were really fascinated with the whole thing. It was just really nice to see the whole cycle, because it's not just about building the satellite and launching it, which is like, that's where the engineers' work usually end. And that's where the remote sensing work usually begins. So we got to do the full cycle. So that was a really fun. Usually I would just get the images, work with them, and not care about the engineer part. So doing the whole thing and connecting all the dots and learning a lot, that's like a play school for me.
Wait for the end of life maneuver. It's also fun.
Oh, we had that actually. It wasn't that fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's discuss your role as an UN Spider expert and head of the Israeli Regional Support Office. First of all, for those of us who are not fluent, what is UN Spider and how can we use space-based information for disaster monitoring?
Okay, so UN Spider is a really, first of all, it's an acronym. Okay, Spider is an acronym. It's really catchy, really catchy. Okay, I'm gonna take like a long breath to say it all. Spider is space-based platform information for disaster management and an emergency response. Oh. Yeah. Really catchy.
Really?
What I tell most people is just remember I'm a Spider woman and you're good. Okay, so and basically this is the UN entity that is responsible for everything that is related to disaster management from space. And when we're talking about disaster management and how it's used, it's first of all, you have to understand there's several stages to the disaster, okay, and how satellite technology could be involved in all of the different stages. So when we're talking about disaster, it's usually something that has an effect on human life, and this is what's the most concerning to everybody. And when you have a disaster such as an earthquake, tsunami, volcano eruption, a really large dust event, okay, the first thing you would get is the response. Okay, if we're looking at the disaster management cycle, the first thing that everybody will usually do is respond to that immediate threat. And after that, in the cycle, you will have the recovery of the area, and after that, the prevention and mitigation. And at the last stage, we could start talking about preparedness. Okay, but that's like the optimum. So in each of these stages, okay, if we break it down, the immediate response is pretty intuitive and clear to most people. And that's how we use geointelligence for rapid mapping. How could we take the images and map the area and see the extent and the impact of what happened? On February, at the beginning of February, we had a very deadly earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Okay, So talking about the immediate response is not just about the forces that are sent to the ground. We have to support those forces from the satellite and tell them, okay, this is the map of the area. We get the images, we map the area really quickly, and we send the forces to the places that they could actually save lives. And this is very important, especially when the event is really large in extent. Now,
you say we, and as far as I know, the UN doesn't have satellites. So can you elaborate a little bit about what do you mean when you say we?
Okay, yeah. The UN doesn't have satellites, but the UN is part of what is called the International Charter. And we bring together all the centers. There's 27 regional support offices worldwide. And these offices, what they do, not in the operational mode, is that they develop algorithms. And when for the immediate response, everybody will go into an operational mode and try to connect everybody that has the ability to take images at that moment. So every space agency, same with the Israeli Space Agency in this event, and every company such as the ImageSat International will become operational for that mission. Okay, and the mission is to really provide images to everybody, all the rescue forces, all the countries for this international charter. Everybody's working together on this operational mode in order to get a very effective response.
So it's all bona fide from the commercial companies?
When it's a very big disaster, most of them, yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
And that's everybody. That's NASA and ESA and Planet. And I don't want to name everybody because I'm going to forget a lot. So just, but yeah, everybody does its absolute best to contribute. But that's on the response, okay? Then that's very intuitive. And think about the geoinformation that could be used before and after the event, okay? How could we map the damage? How can we assess it? How could we look at the recovery stages? Okay, satellite data is used also as an archive of information. You could go back in time. You could look forward, okay? And then taking those images of the area, you could see from direct and indirect measurements how that area is recovering. To the stages that we want to be in, okay, and that usually doesn't happen. We're talking about how we could use satellite images for hazard mapping, but also for risk assessment, okay? And then we could use the satellite data to produce these maps of exposure to risk, vulnerability, okay? And we could make these maps that could help us in disaster risk reduction. Okay, and the last stage, when we're talking about preparedness, we're also already talking about stages that involve early warning systems. And that could be used with so many, not just imaging satellites, but also communication satellites. So it's just amazing to see everything. Now we have to break it down to the operational mode where everybody just wants to help out, and you have to go from that science mode to the diplomatic mode and try to help out internationally. But on the everyday basis, what we do is we develop the algorithms for rapid mapping or for damage assessment, okay? So even years after a disaster had struck, we're still learning that tsunami from 2004 and the Sendai tsunami from 2011 and the Palau tsunami from 2018 in order to better prepare ourselves for the next events, because we know that they're gonna happen. So that's the rest of the time, and that's most of the research that is applied. It's about trying to reduce these risks to save as many lives as possible And it's really nice to see how our science is interpreted into policy and how we could use space for good.
So, do you have a red spider phone next to your bed and it rings whenever they need you?
No, but there are centers such as the DLR Center in Oberpfaffenhofen in Germany that they go operational, and within 24 hours they produce a lot of maps. And these are civilian operations. Of course, there's a lot of military applications that go, like the Home Front Command in Israel. So we help out wherever we can.
That sounds like an amazing endeavor. And it was so good to hear that even commercial companies contribute for a better life for our citizens.
And that's also an Israeli company.
Yeah.
With the help of the Israeli Space Agency just now, and we're very proud of that we were able to help in these efforts.
That's amazing that Israel is part of this international endeavor, and thank you very much for your role in bringing us to this organization. You were recently announced as one of the 50 most influential women in Israel. Were you surprised that this happened? And why do you think you were chosen?
Yeah, I was really surprised. I was really surprised. And the funny thing is that I was in Zooms the whole day, and this unknown number was calling me. And I was in Zoom, so I just like hang up the calls, right? And all of a sudden I see this message coming out from our university spokesman, and he says, the Globes are looking for you. You have to pick up the phone. I said, I'm sorry, I'm in Zooms. Have them text me. And they texted me, and I'm trying to read it in between the Zooms, and I was just like, oh my God. And everybody thought something was wrong because I was just so surprised. But it was a positive surprise. Yeah, I was really, really, really flattered, and I really appreciate being chosen as one of 50 women in Israel that is most influential. I know what they chose me for. They wrote that in the text. One of the things is that they recognized the work I did about 10 years ago from remote sensing that yielded really great results. And of course, the SheSpace program, that is a game changer here in Israel and worldwide.
So that brings me to my next question. SheSpace International. It's a huge international program success with institutes from the Ivory Coast, Brazil, Peru, South Korea, Spain, Togo, USA, Israel, and I guess more countries that I forgot.
Germany, Switzerland, yeah. We have a lot of countries in the program. Nigeria, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about SheSpace International. How does this program, how did it start? And what future do you foresee for this amazing endeavor?
Well, how did it start? It started off right around when we were talking about the satellite, and me being one of the only scientists on the satellite working on BGUSat. And back at the time, my daughter was about 4 years old. Okay, and you have to understand that in my university role as the director of the Earth and Planetary Image Facility, and I'm also on the board of the Ramon Foundation. So working with the Ramon Foundation and having a lot of space-related issues, each year I bring over at least one astronaut to visit the university, and we have a whole day in the memory of Ilan Ramon, Ilan, Asaf, and later on Rona as well. And it just turned out that for like a lot of years, we had no female astronauts. And my daughter asked me, she said, Mommy, how come you don't have any female friends? Okay, it's in Hebrew. It took me a while to understand because the gender
Yeah.
in Hebrew is a bit different, so my translation is not accurate. And I was saying, well, what do you mean? And I was telling everybody in the lab that she asked me that. And we had like the whole discussion about me being the only scientist, and that about every time that we have an outreach program in the lab, we only have 2 girls participate in a 20 people program. So we will get 18 boys and 2 girls. So we were discussing this for a while. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make my daughter happy. I'm going to bring her a female astronaut. And we said, this year's conference is going to be themed Women in Space. And this was back in 2016. And we were saying, okay, so let's try to find some women that are very highly ranked in Israel. And we put together a list of really great women that came over, and then we're going to discuss that and the names of the women in a second. And we brought astronaut Shannon Walker over for this conference, and she was incredible. And we had my 4.5-year-old, and maybe she was 5 already, present her the gift from Ben Gurion on behalf of the future generation. And then following that event, we had a lot of discussions in the lab, and we said, okay, how could we increase the visibility of women and the participation of women within our programs? And how could we get more women engaged? And then we were discussing ways to do so. And we decided to name our program She Space, and thought maybe if we just close it from the gender point of view, will that be a great motivation and encouragement for the girls to participate? And this was like an issue of debate, because I was thinking, if we have 20 places for a group and I only get 2 girls, I'm going to have such a hard time recruiting the girls, right? That's like, that's the logic. And we just, okay, and we said, okay, let's do it. We launched the program. We put this really great post on Facebook. We went over to a few schools just to tell them, okay, do you want to work with us? Just come to the lab and work with us. We didn't want to be very specific about what. It's related to satellites. We're going to have fun, but we just didn't want to go into the hardcore of the science, not to scare anybody off. And we had 80 girls apply for the program.
80.
80. 80. And we're like, okay, this is okay. And this is when we realized that we're doing something different. And because we're scientists, we started researching the topic. It's very important for me to note that we did not at any stage of the program talk about gender issues. We did everything completely with the guys and everything. We just like do everything as we did, but we never talked about, and we don't have a lesson plan for gender issues. But we did understand that we have to understand why this motivated the girls. Why would a gender separated group will motivate the girls to participate? And we understood that girls have different learning styles, and they need the justification for the scientific problem. And that's how we made this program for the learning needs of high school girls. And we motivate them to learn, to study and investigate something that is very close from the science point of view, very close to their heart, and that's climate change, but dealing with the satellite technology. So in each of the countries, what we do is that we have the girls study a climate change question within their political borders using their local satellite technology. Okay. And then what they do is that they compare the results with one another, so they get this really nice global perspective of what's going on worldwide, because the wildfires in Brazil directly affect us. Okay, and they see the connections and they see the different satellite technologies. And what do you do with countries that don't have their own satellite? And this is where the international component is really important.
Yeah.
And this is where the collaboration kicks in. And this is where SDG 17, which is partnership for the goals, it becomes really, really understandable. And so they get a really nice view of everything. They get to do hands-on. They get to operate satellite. They talk to state-of-the-art. They talk to like really forefront engineers and scientists, and they use state-of-the-art technology. So it's a really nice program.
For sure. And
I like it.
as a father of two girls and two boys, I'm always fascinated about the fact that I can see it with my girls also. They feel more comfortable to show their interests in science and engineering when they are in a separated group. And this is something that I think we should solve once and for all for
Exactly.
future.
But the thing is that you're right. I don't know. This is a societal issue. Okay. Eventually, when we talk about space and we talk about women in space, what most people don't understand that this is not a women's problem. Okay. And most men would answer that by saying, okay, look, you succeeded, you could do it. It's just a matter of will. It's not just a matter of will. It's a matter of support. It's a matter of where you grew up. It's a matter of culture. And basically, I grew up in a very supportive male environment that encouraged me greatly. And I don't have a problem working with my male colleagues. And when they understand that this is something that affects the entire society, then they are all engaged also to solving this problem, understanding that diversity increases productivity and that we get so much better ways of thinking and more perspectives and different ways of thinking and aspects to solving the problem. So it yields more products, basically. It's good for everybody at the end.
But how did it become international?
Well, after the first year, what happened is that I was called to the UN to give a talk on the International Women and Girls Day in Science. And we also launched a really nice program with the help of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Israeli Space Agency, along with UN USA, that is called Space for Women. Okay, and this program just grew and grew. Israel supports this program a lot, not just financially, but also very actively. In 2024. We're going to be hosting the next Space for Women expert meeting.
Wow, great.
That's going to be hosted in Israel. Next year, at the end of October, the beginning of November, it's going to be hosted in Canada. So make sure if you have colleagues, point them our direction. So we've been called up to the United Nations, and we've been working on all scales of ages, because it's basically you have to start from the youth till they're mature and support the whole process. And my colleagues that saw the talk that I gave in United Nations said, okay, you know what? We collaborate, we do science overseas, we do this for years, let's make the program international. So we started off with Germany, Brazil, United States, and Israel, and we just grew and grew. And it's amazing to see how girls from South Korea interact with girls from the United States and Switzerland and Nigeria. It's different age groups, and everybody has this common language of science and technology and space. It just becomes really nice to see how we could overcome so many barriers with one project.
Wow, amazing. And do you see the graduates of the program becoming ambassadors and
Well,
showing other girls and talking about it and promoting it?
Oh, Meidad, I think that you, Maya, and I are like in this joint parenthood relationship with Adi.
Yes, that's true. Absolutely.
Yeah, so our girls are absolutely incredible. They already acted as ambassadors, and they act as ambassadors within their communities, but also in international scales. Last February, we had one of our girls present in the UN in the International Day of Children Science. Yeah, her name is Noah. And this week, as we speak, what's the date? Oh, this week.
May the 4th, of course.
Yeah, of course. Oh, why did I forget that? We have another Noah in Canada that is presenting also in Vancouver. So these girls got to fly around to Vienna, to the United Nations headquarters, and to South Korea and participate in the SGACA hackathon. And last year, they were also over at the United Arab Emirates, meeting with Emirati kids and promoting war and peace. So we have a lot of different endeavors for these girls. We had connections from the Israeli and German groups interacting and visiting each other. So there's a lot of international components, and hopefully 2024, when we have the big meeting, the expert meeting, the UN USA expert meeting here in Israel, hopefully we're going to have all the groups connect here as well.
Wow, amazing. So now it's shout out time. Which Israeli women working in the space industry or academia should we follow?
So I don't know how our audience here is familiar, but we also established a community in Israel. It's actually an association. It's called We Space, WI, Women in Space Israel. And just to name a few, we have over 250 members in our group.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So the next time somebody says, there aren't enough women that could participate in a conference, point them in our direction. We're just gonna name so many talented and gifted women. So I was gonna start reading the names because there's so many. And we have really incredible women on international roles, like Dr. Dganit Paikovsky, that was the vice
president
of the International Astronautical Federation. And we have very senior people like the legal advisor Karen Shachar from Ministry of Foreign Affairs that promotes space and was also she had international role also in the COPUS, the committee
Outer Space Affairs.
Yeah. So many acronyms, I can't keep up. Yeah. So many gifted and amazing women. I don't feel comfortable talking about Maya because I feel like we already exposed here that we have like a shared child. but yeah, there's just like so many women. Just go online. We try to highlight these women as much as possible in international conferences and in conferences in Israel. Sometimes you just have to know where to look. So if you're looking for a great Israeli women speaker, we have a great pool of amazing.
So the list of all 250 members is on the WeSpace website?
You could not all of it because some of them cannot be exposed, but contact one of the members in WeSpace and we will direct you to the right names.
Okay. When our interview will go online in a few days, I will post all the links. So please wait for it. Wait for it, and then you can go. And last question. What do you think about the Israeli space industry and how it will look like in, let's say, 2050?
Ooh. Yeah, that's a good question. Do you understand? Do you realize that in 2050 we're going to be like the senior ones and coming to the conferences with our wheelchair and but we're going to be...
I'm going to come with my space hover, so hoverboard.
Well, I am a big fan of the Israeli space industry, and I think it's always innovative, and this is something that is within our DNA. This and you know, talking about diversity just a few minutes ago, I think this is one of the reasons that Israel is so innovative, because of that diversity, and because we have so many people gathered together from different backgrounds working in the same place. You are exposed to different perspectives and innovative ideas that yield up in all these great startup companies. I see it increasing, and I'm hoping to see even before 2050 the first Israeli female astronaut.
Yes.
Maybe Dr. Reut Soroka-Vormovich, that I know she was in a Space Café a while back.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is a great candidate for that as well.
Maybe one of our daughters.
A dream that I would go even one way.
Well, I can share with you that when the Mars One raffle started, I wanted to enroll for the one-way flight to Mars, but I got vetoed so hard, so I pulled out my name.
Well, yeah, my kids were so offended that I was thinking about that. It's like, how could you think that? Yeah, I would go as well.
Okay, so I have a partner. I can keep the seat next to me.
Let's go. Let's just get on that rocket.
Exactly. Shimrit, that was so much fun. And now, Torsten, if you may, read us some questions from the audience.
I would, but we don't have questions from the audience. It's a very quiet audience. I think either you answered it all, or yeah, you didn't left the questions open.
Well,
but I do have
at least
one.
3 questions, Torsten.
Say it again.
I can see at least 3 questions on the Q&A.
Ah, damn it! Sorry. Yeah, wrong window. I bet. The problem is in front of the computer. I know. Today it's me. Otherwise, I had a question. Okay, good. Mark, how can we? Thank you, Mark, and thanks for joining today. How can we promote those space corporations to other sectors and the brighter public as best practices?
How could we promote? Okay, first of all, it's a matter of, in my opinion, it's always a matter of people with their will. Okay, if there's a will, you'll always find the way. Okay, but answering it in a more industry and more professional manner, I would say find what is the win-win situation for both, and that would always get a really great collaboration going.
Great, thank you. Then Chris, how could I even think that you don't have a question today? So again, I'm so sorry. Regarding the global sounds improving their access to technology in space, what would you recommend to emerging space countries for developing sovereign domestic capabilities with spillover potentials?
Well, this is true to every country, not just global south, but first of all, find a good collaborator that is willing to invest with that. It's all about education. There is a lot of sacrifice to do also on the personal level, and budget is always an issue. But sometimes you could overcome that easily, especially nowadays with this remote technology and these online courses, and that everything is just available and open access. So sometimes an investment in a really good partnership, even if it's by Zoom, okay, or like this virtual connection, could make the entire difference.
I have a question that is not written here before I come to the last two ones. So I was impressed by everything you said about she and we space. So, but how can press help you to get the name out?
What do you excuse me? What do you mean?
How can a media platform, a press, informed press like we help you to get the name out? I mean, sure, Meidad invited you to this to the Space Café Israel, what is great, and I'm very grateful to have you here. But the next step, you know.
Well, thank you for that offer. But one of my problems here is that you have to remember that I'm a research lab, so I'm very limited with my resources and my capability of how many groups I can host. The best thing to do for me is to find a really good partner in different countries that has the ability to host such a project. And then what we do is that we provide the basic training, and we have them, we provide all the lesson plans and everything, and they just could carry it on locally. Okay.
Shimrit, if I may interrupt, what Torsten is offering is to be an ambassador and to be helpful, because Space International, it's an amazing program that nobody knows about. So maybe Torsten, a dedicated article in SpaceWatch.Global about this Space International program will be a good start. So to promote this endeavor everywhere. And the question was, in general, how the press, the written press or the digital press can support and allow young girls from all over the globe, without even having champions in their specific countries, know about this, because as you know, Shimrit, if you can't see it, you can't be it.
That's okay. Thank you, Meidad. That's what the program is based about, just increasing the visibility of women. And it's not that we don't have boys or men in the program. We do. We have also boys participating in the program. We just increase the visibility and expose these girls to more female leaders or scientists or engineers, et cetera, et cetera. And for me, the best thing that could happen is that when you already cover a story, is not just address it to women, but also proactively address it to men and say, okay, you could encourage women by, or you could just notice that there aren't any women on the panel and maybe ask a colleague and be more proactive in recruiting that female colleague to a panel or things like that. But there's a lot of things that could be done.
I definitely have to get you connected to our wonderful editor-in-chief, Dr. Emma, who's driving that forward on our end. So we just had conversations with the Women in Aerospace and other of these organizations for adult women, obviously, but we have a heart for education and reaching out. Before we coming back, one question Martin asked, and that affects your research work. Considering the recent move of IDF's technology unit to Beersheba, Could you elaborate on how that might impact your institute's agenda in terms of research priorities?
Well, we're actually preparing for that for the past 20 years. It's not something that is by surprise. We've been doing that for the past 20 years. And the impact is just in the, we're collaborating with it, and we're all, when we're very much involved. Our impact will be in people moving down to the Negev region. We want to increase the population here down south, and it's not, Israel is really small. We make like a big fuss of everything, but when you're talking about the distance between Tel Aviv and Beersheba, it's an hour drive. But for us, it's just such a big distance, and yeah, we make a really big fuss about it. So having people move down to the south and having more workplaces here will do the job eventually.
Good. An hour drive, that's what takes me to go to the city of Berlin.
I know.
And that's just 20 kilometers, but potentially these days it's more because people are gluing on streets and doing it for the climate, but that's another discussion. However, coming back to SheSpace and vSpace, and Maya asks, so where do you see SheSpace in 10 years? I did not read the next, the last of it, or the rest of it. And then Dov Liatov, I hope that's correctly pronounced, is SheSpace a program only for high school girls, and vSpace is for all women? Just to clarify on that.
Okay, so my dream, Maya, and where I'm seeing SheSpace is actually, SheSpace is aimed for 10 years from now. Then that's the reason why I started off with high school girls, because usually when they get to university, it's too late. They already chose what they're going to learn. They're already chose their major. I don't have the ability to influence that decision. So if I target younger girls, I could actually influence their life path. And that's why the program starts off in high schools. And in 10 years, that would be my ultimate test to see where these girls are and what an impact that program had on their lives and on their career path. And the difference between WithSpace is, I think the legal age, you have to be above 18 or 21. I have to double check myself. But once you reach the WeSpace site, it's going to stay on the site. I just don't recall the talks because that was about 4 years ago when we started off with this organization. And yeah, basically you could be a member, and if you can't be a member for that program, there's so many great other programs that promote STEM and STEAM and space. It's just a matter of getting connected, and then we could point you out in the exact direction you're looking for.
Cool. Thank you. That's from my end. Back to you, Meidad.
So I can't believe, but our hour just flew by. It was super interesting, and I think that we can continue for at least an additional hour. Shimrit, thank you very much for being our special guest at this Space Café Israel.
Thank you for having me.
And as I mentioned, in a few days, it will be online, and you'll find it on SpaceWatch.Global. And my next guest, early June, will be someone from Type 5. What is Type 5 and who will be my guest? Stay tuned. Back to you, Torsten.
Great. Thank you. I also want to say thank you, Shimrit, for this wonderful conversation and all these insights. So before we close, just a quick run or outlook what we have on our agenda for the next days or next weeks for you or the audience. Next week, we will be here in Berlin at the IAA Space Symposium for small satellites, this academic conference. And on Tuesday, I have the great pleasure to do our 33 minutes live from there. And my guest will be no one else than Professor Enrico Stoll from the TU Berlin and Jens Berdermann from the DLR. The week later, we will be in Munich at the Munich Space Conference, and then the week after there is Glock in Oslo, so we will cover Glock from there, and we will try to squeeze some Space Café in. Stay tuned for that. On the 30th of May, we have our next session for the Space Arbitration Association by the wonderful Laura Zelinsky. This time we will talk, or she will talk, about Asia and space arbitration out of Asia. And then we continue with another Black Ops by our wonderful Dr. Emma Gatti together with Dr. Amrata Goswami. And I think this time we'll talk about Russia, but I'm not sure. And then followed by Space Law Breakfast by Stephen Freeland with his two very good, very young guests, Rovimbo Zamgana and Dr. Antonino Salmeri. And then we continue into the June with Space Café Canada, Brazil, and we didn't have to fix the date for the next Space Café Israel, but you will see it is in between. So with that, you find all these events are on Eventbrite. Register there, follow us there, and then you will get all the updates. And as always, we would like to hear your feedback, so please check in with us on Twitter, on Facebook, or on LinkedIn. So don't forget to sign up for our daily or bi-weekly newsletters. And if you want to support us even more, become a Space Watcher. Very easy, or help us in this supporter program. Thank you all for your interest today, and thank you, Shimrit and Meidad, for our guest, being our guest or hosting it, and especially for this inspiring talk. And thanks again to this entire team that makes this show possible today. Thank you, dear audience, for joining us. Hope to see you all at the next events. In the meantime, visit our website and follow us on social media. And don't forget to become a Space Watcher. And when you see a Space Watcher on the street, just say hi and be nice to him. Thank you very much.